No system.
Weapon.
Wait till that stops, because then it'll be.
That'll be live.
We'll chat. Hello.
There. All right, folks, I want to welcome everyone to our hurricane meeting for the hurricane that none of us want to have happen. We are Zooming this, so I want to welcome our folks who are joining us via Zoom. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Peter Christian. I'm the general manager of Hilton Head Plantation. In the back is Vanessa Green. She is the director of security. She is actually our in-house hurricane coordinator. So if we get news from Tom, who I'm going to introduce here in a minute, Vanessa then takes over and we institute our hurricane plan. I've been here for, many of you know, 25 years. So I've been through Hurricane Matthew, been through a couple of hurricane evacuations, a couple of hurricane scares. Vanessa has also been with us almost as long as I have. She's a 24-year veteran. So we've been through this. And how many new people do we have here that never, been through a hurricane before? Okay. You shoveled snow up north. Okay. I did that too for a long time before I came south of the Mason-Dixon line. Along the bluff, right by the China Cockle outfall, there is a piece of riprap that I left there after Hurricane Matthew, and I had a plaque put on it to show you. That was, depending on who you talk to, that was a category, high category 1, low 2, depending on who has bragging rights. But that piece of revetment, which is probably weighs about 2 tons, was tossed up there during Hurricane Matthew. And we just left it there to remind folks the power that these storms have. And Tom's going to go over this with you in detail. Tom Dunn has been with the Town of Hilton Head's Fire and Rescue Department for, I think he just told me, over 30 years. And he's been with emergency management for 13 years now. And I've worked very, very closely with Tom. Every time you get an email blast from me about a weather, I get the information from Tom. So if you don't like that information, you can yell at Tom about it. But I'm going to introduce Tom Dunn. He's going to introduce one of his colleagues, Cinda, who also works with emergency management. And there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions. So with that, I'm going to introduce Tom Dunn.
Thanks, Peter. So I've got 2 microphones on here, so forgive me if I drop one. So if I drop the mic, just yell at me and I'll pick it back up. Peter, great. I'm Tom Dunn. I've been here for about 13 years and been in public safety and emergency management for almost 30. I have Sherry Mendrick with me, wherever she went. She's our floodplain manager. We're going to talk a little bit of hurricane stuff, and then we're going to let her talk about some floodplain management and storm surge stuff, and then we'll come back to more hurricanes. So first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the town's emergency management program. We are an accredited agency through the Emergency Management Accreditation Program. They're an international program that does accreditation of emergency management programs throughout the world. We are one of only 3 accredited organizations in the state of South Carolina. It's us, Charleston County, as well as the state of South Carolina, so South Carolina Emergency Management Division. We are the smallest entity in the continental U.S. that they have ever accredited by far by population. And we're the only accredited agency they have with only 1 employee doing full-time emergency management. So just kind of like to brag on that a little bit. So we're accredited now, and we're in the process of getting our 2nd accreditation. It's a 5-year process, but we're in the middle of that 2nd accreditation process. Oops. Got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Oh, there's our other 2. So before we get into hurricane stuff, I wanted to talk about my slide deck the fancy stuff didn't work. It was supposed to be a blank screen with just a title. So Hilton Head we're prone to a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Not only hurricanes that we need to talk about. Does anything on that list kind of make you go, really? Here? What? Sure. Yep, that's a large one. Anything on this list make you go, well, we don't believe that's here, or that why is that on that list? I get a lot of question marks on tsunamis, right? Tsunami is a real risk here. It's low probability, but it is a high risk. It's not the same risk that you would see in like Indonesia and places like that. For us, it'll be a low, fast moving multitude of waves coming on shore. So if you're 3 or 4 blocks off of equivalent to 3 or 4 blocks off of the beach or up on the second or third floor of a building, you're most likely going to be fine. But that is a risk that we do have here. So let's talk about hurricanes a little bit. This is the forecast from the 2024 season. We look at NOAA, which is the National Hurricane Center, and as well as Colorado State. I like Colorado State, ironically. Odd place to do hurricane research, but they've got a great program. I usually look to them because they pick a number. NOAA picks a range where Colorado State says, hey, we're going 23, 11, and 5. So that was their forecast in April of last year, and NOAA's was in May. That's their actual forecast. So really not a bad forecast, right? When you really look at the numbers, not bad, right? A little off, but not too bad. So with that, my question is, the forecasting stuff or the predictions are pretty interesting, right? But do they matter in the great scheme of things for us? Right, exactly right. It only takes one. Strong. If you talk, you might get stuff. So exactly right. It only takes one, right? One to give us a bad day. And that's the hurricane tracks from 2024. You can see a couple of them gave us a little scare. Helene was the big one that luckily missed us, but unfortunately helped hurt our fellow South Carolinians and Georgians and Tennesseans and Virginians all along the way. So here are the forecasts for 2025. Pretty close to an average season. It averages like 16, 8, and 3. So they're pretty much calling for an average season again, but again, it only takes one, right? So before I turn it over to Sherry, I like to throw this up there. That's a Saffir-Simpson scale. Everybody familiar with that? Right? That's what they rate hurricanes with: 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. How important is the number in the great big picture of hurricanes? All right, I got one very. Anything else? It's all right. It depends, right? You could have a Cat 5 with 3 feet of storm surge, or a Cat 3 with 16 feet of storm surge, right? So when you look at that, when you look at those categories, what is it really looking at? Wind, right? Wind is the only thing it's looking at. Wind is only one piece of that picture. That's why a lot of times when you hear for evacuation order for a Category 1, well, yes, we're looking at the wind, or the governor's looking at the wind, but he's also looking at what is the potential storm surge, what is the rain on top of that storm surge. So all that comes into play when they're making that evacuation decision. So the Saffir-Simpson scale only goes with wind. So when you hear the category, also pay attention to the other stuff related to that storm. And with that, we'll go with floods now.
Sorry, I snuck up behind you. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm Sherry Mendrick. I'm the town's floodplain administrator. I've been with the town for 8 years, and I am very happy to be here to speak to you guys today. To move on to the next piece of what Tom was talking about, the Saffir-Simpson scale only looks at wind events, but I'm going to tell you about rainfall and storm surge. But I'm going to give you a little bit of information first. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Who lives in a flood zone? Raise your hand if you live in a flood zone. I should see every single hand up in this room. Everybody lives in a flood zone. Flood zones are defined in terms of risk, and I'll get to that in just a second. So the first thing I'd like to talk about, we've switched up our slides. So just so you know, this is a little different for us. We tried to vary it a little bit. The first thing I'm going to tell you about is that you do need to know what your flood hazard is, and that everybody lives in a flood zone. The flood zones are determined by flood insurance rate maps that are published by FEMA. Beaufort County entered the National Flood Insurance Program in 1977. The town subsequently entered the National Flood Insurance Program upon its incorporation in 1984. We also have flood maps from 1986. So from 77 and 84, flood maps were generated for the county and then the town. Then we had flood maps in 1986, and we've recently had a map revision in 2021. So here are your flood zones in terms of risk. A zone X and X shaded are considered the low and moderate risk zones. The thing that you need to know about those flood zones are those are the zones that FEMA does not require a federal flood insurance purchase of federal flood insurance purchase. So in those zones, you're not federally required to carry flood insurance if you have a mortgage on your home. But just keep in mind, I'm going to say this several times throughout my presentation, is that you do own property on an island. So just keep that in mind as we talk about that. Zones AE or Zone AE is the high risk zone. It also has an associated base flood elevation. That is also known as the 1% annual chance flood. A lot of people call it the 100-year flood, but that flood event has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. So please keep that in mind, that it's not every 100 years, it can occur 1% in any given year. We also, being on the coast, have coastal high hazard zones, which is zone VE. And then we also have areas of shallow flooding, which typically occurs behind the dune systems along the Forest Beach area and in sea pines. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what these flood maps tell you. Keep in mind that these are probability maps. I wanted to show you the FEMA flood insurance rate map from 1986. Those are the legacy flood insurance maps that I had told you about. So a lot of our property that has been constructed under the jurisdiction of these maps. I would like to point out the areas in blue and the dark green. There's some areas along, I don't have a pointer, but there's some areas along Port Royal Sound, along the bluff that used to be mapped in the VE zone. So when you look at this map, there's about 75% of the land area in the high risk zone and only about 25% of our land area in the low risk zone. So I'm pointing this out to you because prior to 2021, your home may have been located in a high risk zone. And if you had a mortgage, you had to carry flood insurance. But then all of a sudden in 2021, you were told you can drop your flood insurance policy. What hasn't changed? Our geography, we're still on an island. So I asked our state coordinator who helps with publishing these maps, what was this big change? Better data. Well, the new 2021 maps were, I'm not going to show them to you yet. The 2021 maps were actually published, or actually the data was gathered in, the processing was completed in 2015. What had not yet happened in 2015? Matthew, and what happened after Matthew? Do you guys remember? Irma, believe it or not, Hurricane Irma was a big flooding event for our island. We had more flooding from Hurricane Irma than we did from Matthew. So the new maps do not take that into account. So just keep in mind that even though the maps show that your risk has changed, your geography has not changed. You are still at risk of flooding living on an island for various reasons. So this is the digital, it's called the DFIRM now, a digital flood insurance rate map dated March 23rd of 2021. The colored areas are the high risk zone, and the areas that are unshaded and have no coloring to it are the low risk zone. That statistic swapped as far as our land area. We only have 75% of our land area in the high risk zone. 75% in the low risk zone and 25% in the high risk zone. So just keep that in mind. I want you to kind of think through this as you look at your finances, look at your mortgages, look at your insurance coverage. That flood insurance is not part of any homeowner's policy, so it is a separate policy, which I'll talk about in just a second. The other risk that you have with water is not just water that's coming down from the sky, which is what is modeled by those flood insurance rate maps, but it's also storm surge. And storm surge is actually that push of water from the wind-driven waves that pushes the water further onshore. So there are storm surge predictability maps that are developed by NOAA as well. And you can see the area that's in red is what will be inundated by a Category 1 storm. So very similar, just going to go back to those old maps, very similar to those old flood insurance rate maps. So even if your flood zone has changed, your risk of storm surge has not changed. And actually, this is fairly new data. This is from 2022. The areas that are in orange will be inundated along with the areas in red for a Category 2 storm. So just keep in mind that the colors are building. The area in yellow will be inundated during a Category 3 storm. And the areas in green will be inundated by a Category 4 storm. What do you not see a lot of on there? The blue, because at a Category 4, they anticipate the whole island will be inundated. So just keep that in mind, that even though we talk about wind, there's also rainfall, there's also storm surge that's involved. I'm going to tell you just a couple other things about FEMA and flood insurance. So just keep in mind, please consider insuring your property. The NFIP was created in 1968, which made flood insurance available to communities that participated in the National Flood Insurance Program. Beaufort County became a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program in 1977. And then subsequently, when the town was incorporated in 84, that transferred over to us by signing a memorandum of agreement with FEMA and adopting a resolution and an ordinance to enforce floodplain regulations. If you insure your property and you have a FEMA flood policy, please check your policy. There should be a line item on your declarations page that either says Community Rating System Discount or CRS discount. It doesn't mean that you can't remember stuff. It's Community Rating System. So just keep that in mind, and it should say 25%. All of our citizens with a regular FEMA flood insurance policy are eligible for a 25% discount on your flood insurance. So when you guys get home, when you have a few minutes, check your policy and make sure that that is credited on your policy. It does not apply to private flood insurance, which there are people who do have private flood insurance. It's like shopping for car insurance. FEMA's rates are set, and then anywhere else, if you go into the private market, they are competitive rates. But if you're in that FEMA market, look for that 25% discount. That 25% discount is determined by a class rating, and we get that because the town does what's called higher regulatory standards. So we have higher building standards than what's required by the NFIP. We also get credit for our storm drainage system. So we actually have a maintenance agreement with Hilton Head Plantation, and we get credit for maintaining that. We also get credit for the golf courses that say that they're going to maintain their golf courses open space it's a 5-year cycle period. So for 5 years, so I get a signature from all the golf course superintendents. So that attributes to our class rating. All of our other parks that have open space that are undeveloped contribute to that class rating. Doing presentations like this to you guys gets me points for class rating. Oops, sorry. And also a lot of the activities like Tom's EMAP program, that also gets us a lot of points in the community rating system to maintain that class 5. One of the other things we like to talk about is protect yourself when there's a flooding event. Turn around, don't drown. You may or may not have seen this. There's a silly little song that goes around along with this. I'm not going to sing it. However, you have to keep in mind that 6 inches of water, flowing water, can knock you off your feet. I also drive a little Honda Civic. That can carry my little car off the road. Even if you drive a bigger vehicle, a foot of flowing water can carry your vehicle off the road. So please do not drive through flood water. What else could happen if you drive through flood water? Like you're driving along and then all of a sudden, psh. Well, that too. What if the road's not there anymore? Yeah, so just keep that in mind that we're in an area with sandy soil. If the roadbed washes away, you're stuck. Most of the deaths that are caused during a flood event are from people drowning in their cars. So please keep that in mind. If you see a roadway that's flooded, turn around, don't drown. Also protect your property. You guys know that. Insure your property, which like I said, I'm gonna say it 1,000 times. Store your valuables and insurance paper on upper floors or in a place that will not be flooded. So that's one way that you can protect your valuables and the stuff that you have. When you have flooded equipment, replace that equipment and elevate that equipment. So that'll reduce the risk of it flooding again. And if worse comes to worse and you've had multiple flood events, you keep getting flooded over and over, come talk to me. We can talk about means to elevate your home and get it out of harm's way. We also up front ask that people build responsibly. We always ask that you get a building permit before doing anything and make sure that you use a licensed contractor. Try not to maximize that building footprint. I know it's hard to do. You have an acre, you want to build a house that fills up setback to setback. I know that's an exaggeration, but try to minimize the footprint. Give yourself some green space. Give the water somewhere to go around your house instead of in your house. And also set the buildings back from wetlands. We do have some pretty strict standards that keep people from building too close to wetlands, but if you have the opportunity, build as far back as you can if you go to build a new house. One of the other things that we talk about, and one of the other things we get credit for in community rating system, is protecting those natural floodplain functions. Of course, you guys see on the screen our little sea turtles. Sea turtle season has started and is underway. We also have piping plovers, which is a migratory endangered species. We also have these little guys, excuse me, have you guys seen these pink guys on the bottom, the rosette spoonbills? If you've not ever seen them, there are some that hang around the old oyster factory on Marshall Road. So you can go out there in the evening and have a cocktail on the porch, and it's likely that you will see a rosette spoonbill. There's some neat shorebirds that we have. And also it leads to lots of passive recreation, lots of nature walking trails, and areas where you can just really enjoy your surrounding, but that does help protect the floodplain functions. Do you want me to save questions to the end?
Sure,
Okay.
either way.
Okay,
But
sure.
the wetland setback,
Yes,
has that changed over the years?
it has changed over the years. Right now, it's 20 feet for building footprints and then an additional 5 feet. So there's a setback and a buffer that's related to it. And right now, we are in the process of rewriting our land management ordinance, which regulates that buffer. And we are looking at increasing that buffer right now, but it has changed over the years. You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions for me? I'll be here till the end just in case something comes up. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you sure can. FEMA flood insurance is the best thing to do first, and then the private would be like the gap insurance. So it would fill in the blanks afterwards. So yes, a lot of people do have both policies. Any other questions? Like I said, I'll be here in case something else comes up. Okay, thank you.
I want to reinforce something that's in the set. The FEMA maps presently on the books were pre-Matthew. During Irma, the security department made the decision to stay behind, and that included me. And I helped clear drains, and I couldn't clear them because the water was coming out of the drains from the storm sewers. So homes will flood, and I'm saying this in all candor. If you are on Hilton Head Plantation, you should have flood insurance. It is absolutely essential to have flood insurance. Homes will flood. Those FEMA maps were pre-Matthew. To me, they don't hold a candle. You need flood insurance. We have wonderful agreements with the town. Cinda mentioned the one about stormwater. I'm saying, keep on calling you Cinda.
That's okay.
Sherry.
Cinda's a good friend of mine. She's really a good friend of mine.
I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
We have an agreement with the town on stormwater management. They handle our infrastructure and they pay for it out of the stormwater management fee. You pay your tax bill. We also have an agreement with Hilton Head Fire and Rescue that they will use our fuel dump behind the POA to fuel all of their equipment, from ambulances, their fire trucks, their engines, their ladder companies, every single one of those vehicles. Before Matthew, evacuation came to that fuel dump, fueled up, and then after Matthew, they came back and fueled up. And they paid for every cent of fuel. The benefit to us on that was, where do you think they pushed first? When we came in after Matthew, I had one lane all the way down Squire Cove Road, down Seabrook Drive, down Surrey Lane, right to my fuel dump. So that got all of my people back on the island very, very quickly. We were the first ones there. Last thing, we have an agreement with the town on removing storm debris from the roads and from picking up the debris. Our piece of Hurricane Matthew was probably around $16 million that the town picked up and FEMA reimbursed them. I think you reimbursed 85%, Sherry?
75.
75% because you're pre-approved.
Mhm.
And is it, I thought it was better than 75.
The pre-approval went away at 75.
Yeah.
It went
so-
down to 75 a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And the town could have thrown that 25% back at us, and they didn't. It's $16 million that we didn't have to pay. So anything that was along the road or the road right of way, they picked up. And that was on FEMA's dime and the town's dime. So we have those relationships with them, and they're very, very important. But the flood insurance thing, I really want to emphasize. It took one truck liner bed that flew out of a truck next to the outflow on Main Street and clogged the outflow on Main Street. And it flooded headlands. And several homes had hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. You cannot predict, and there's nobody here. There's no fire and rescue, there's no medical services, there's no one here to monitor that. You're alone. And I'm sure Tom is going to talk about how foolish it is to stay behind. Because there are zero services. Electricity goes out, you get hurt, you get bit by a snake, an alligator comes after you. There's nobody here. So use common sense.
Hey, Peter, I have a question.
Shoot.
Is there a place where you have sandbags and build sandbags?
No, we don't. You're on your own with that. And the other thing, after 25 years, and maybe Tom will bear me out, I am not a climate alarmist, but sea level has risen. I see higher tides now than it did in the past. Pine Island, it gets inundated far more now than it did back when I arrived here in 2000. So that is affecting the amount of inundation that the town gets. The town is doing a lot of beach renourishment, and a lot of people feel, oh, gee, that's just for the tourists. No, it's not. That protects us from storm surge as well. And they've included Pine Island for the first time, and we're going to get a huge plug of sand put on Pine Island. And that is not just for tourists. That is to protect the barrier island and to protect the dunes and to protect us from storm surge as well. So those are big things the town has done for us to protect us from hurricanes.
Sweet. While Sherry was talking, she mentioned the points we get for our stormwater system. I went back and grabbed some numbers I think are pretty impressive from Hurricane Debbie. So three of our lift stations during Hurricane Debbie. Who wants to guess how many gallons of water those three of our largest pump stations, how much water they moved? They got a wild guess? Millions. That's a good call. Yeah. At 441 million gallons of water over 161 hours. So that just goes to show you the effort that's put into some of the systems and the protective measures that we have in place. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and continue down the path of hurricanes. And what's that? Well, it goes out into the sound. It goes all over into other places. It doesn't go. It's just pumping it out into the. So let's talk about the Hurricane Center. Hurricane Center's got a bunch of new products. I shouldn't say a bunch of new products. Every year they put out new products, or they update products, or they change products, or they take a test product and make it a permanent product. So this is the current air cone that they have. Everybody recognizes the air cone. That's the same cone that's been out there for years and years and years. So last year they started doing a new air cone, and they added some additional information to it. So instead of all those colors that you see on there are watches and warnings. Okay, so if we go back here to our previous cone, so when you see look at the previous cone here, this cone, you see the watches and the warning areas, right? It's just along the coast. So what they found was people along the coast obviously paid attention, but folks more inland and in other areas really didn't pay a lot of attention, or as much attention as they should, to the hurricane warnings or watches or warnings or whatever the risk that they were trying to portray. So what they've done is they've added large color areas. So now the whole area, the red there is a hurricane warning, and the blue is a hurricane watch. So what they've done is try to make it more visually or more easily seen by everybody for them to understand the hurricane risk. So what they're doing now is this product was brought out in a test mode last year, and it's a test product this year. So what you'll see is the original air cone will come out with all of their updates, and then 30-ish minutes later, give or take, this cone will follow. So if you were to go to the hurricane page, you'll eventually see both cones up there. Eventually, this cone will, this graphic will take the place of the other error cone. Some of the challenges that they're talking about, and they're looking through, they're working with some social scientists and working groups and focus groups to try to figure out, one is that what colors are correct, shades of colors. And then if you can see over there, just below the 7 p.m., you kind of see that pink showing through the blue. What they're trying to do now is how do we figure out how to show multiple watches and warnings in the same location? Because you could have a tropical storm warning, a hurricane watch, and a storm surge watch or warning all in the same place at the same time. So they're trying to figure out how do we blend all that together. So I'm really excited as to where this product is going, but it's a new product that's continuing to get better. Some of the other things that they're doing is they're just extending the hurricane force wind forecast from 2 days to 3 days. Really, all that means is they're continuing to get better at their forecasting and they're more comfortable with what they're doing. Most of the time when they do something like that, they've been doing it in the background for 2 or 3 years before they put it out. So that for us, that's good. It helps us make better decisions because we have better forecasting. Increase in rip current focus. One of the things that they're noticing is outside of the impact areas where the storm is intended to hit, is they're seeing a lot of folks ignore that, but there's a lot of rip current risk outside of those areas, in addition to the area there. So they're trying to focus some of their messaging out to be, look, pay attention to the hurricane because there's an additional risk here of rip currents. So if there's a storm going in the Gulf and it's a wide storm impacting the oceans in the Atlantic, that may cause rip currents here. So you'll see the local National Weather Service offices push more information out related to rip currents. Very similar to what they did 2 years ago when we started to see an increase in fatalities and injuries after the storm. So people were heeding the warning and leaving, but the number of deaths and injuries post-storm were increasing. So they've done more education, and some of their messaging comes out after the storm talking about what are some of the dumb things people do after a storm. Go surfing. All right, I'll give you that one. Go surfing. What else? What are some of the other dumb stuff people do after a storm? Yep. Little tourism, riding around, driving through flood waters, right, Sherry? Wherever she went. Right, down power lines. Who said that? All right, I'm not. They used to be a whole lot better to throw. So I'm gonna be careful. Sorry, I don't want to hit anybody. What else? What do people like to do when as soon as they get home? What do they want to do? Clean up their yard, right? So you got somebody who's not used a chainsaw in 20 years or never used a chainsaw, buys a chainsaw on the way back in and starts using the chainsaw, right? Not smart. How about generators? I come in, I don't want somebody to steal my generator, so I'm gonna put it in the garage, right? Or I'm gonna put it right up against a window by the house because I want to hide it because I don't want somebody to steal it. So carbon monoxide poisoning, right? Yes, you're exactly right. If you plug it into the house, it back surges into the grid. It could cause a injury or death to one of the linemen. Yes, sir. Mhm. So the question was, should he turn the gas off to his generator or leave it on? Really, that's up to you. Yeah, it's an in-place generator. I'm assuming it's an in-ground tank. I mean, if it were me personally, I would probably leave it on because it's not going to turn on unless you need it. The other thing is their forecast cone has gotten smaller. So every year, I believe within the last 10 years, the forecast cone has either gotten smaller or stayed the same. So so that means, we'll go back to our cone there. That means they're getting better at that forecast cone. Who can tell me what that forecast cone or the error cone actually means? What is it? What does this cone tell us? Yes, ma'am. Exactly. It's the eye of the storm is going to do what? Mhm. Oops. Exactly. So the eye of the storm is going to hit somewhere inside of here, right? It's not necessarily going to, it's not telling you where the storm is going to be. That is going to tell you where the eye wall of that storm is going to hit. So if you look down below, how big is the wind field of that storm? Right. Much larger than the error cone down here, right? Exactly. So while the forecast gets better and the error cone gets smaller, that's good for us from a decision-making standpoint because it helps us make better decisions because we're more confident in the forecast. But it hurts us on the outreach side, on the communicating the message side. Because so many people look at that error cone and go, I'm not in the error cone, I'm good. Right? Yes, ma'am. It's a model question at European versus the Euro versus the US model. There's one model that is more accurate than all of them combined, and that's the Hurricane Center. So that's not a sarcastic answer to your question. Is statistically the Hurricane Center is more accurate than all the models combined. And what they do is they take all those different models, and each one of those models has a different piece of data that's put into it. So that's why you see so many different renditions of the model. Is some of them are using different data and different pieces of the forecast. So the European and the US model tend to be the two top dogs in the hunt there. At the hurricane conference a couple of months ago, they talked about a couple of other models that they think will equate to them and be as good as them within the next couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. All right. And then it's a good piece for us, the GIS or mapping software. Every product that the National Weather Service has, they put it out in a GIS layer, a mapping layer. So we can grab that layer and use that in our EOC. We've got a dashboard that we have up on the wall. It's a map that we can pull in their products and pull in their information to help us make decisions along with the other information that we have locally. All right, so let's talk about preparedness. So it's all about you, right? My daughter, when she was yay tall, that was her favorite saying. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Evacuation. And is there any capacity communication margin?
I missed the last half of that. What's that again?
Back and forth, to coordinate the exodus. Lead.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. So is there any coordination with Georgia during a hurricane evacuation? And the answer is yes. And most of that takes place at the governor's office. The two governors and their representatives are talking not only Georgia, but also Florida. And then again in North Carolina, depending on what direction the evacuation is going, because it may be North Carolina evacuating pieces of there and not us. Additionally, Beaufort County has a rep in their EOC that their role is to communicate with Chatham County and locally. So we have that local communication with Chatham County as well as us, and then the state communicates directly with each individual state. That answer your question? Okay. All right. So preparedness. I say it's all about you because it is. It's all about you and where you are at the moment, right? If you have a dog, you want to plan for a dog. If you don't have a dog, you don't need to buy dog food, right? So preparedness wise, you got your preparedness guides there. I've got extra copies if you want to grab more than one on the way out. We have English and I have a handful of Spanish if you're interested in that. It's also on the town's website in multiple different formats. So it is in PDF format. So you can do it as an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and print out the pieces and parts that you want. It's also in PDF form in this size. So you can print it out. It'll print, I think it's two pages per 8.5 by 11 page. And it's also in like issue format or in a magazine format. So you can hit, just like with Pink Magazine and some of those others, you hit the button, it flips a page. So it looks just like you're using a magazine. So we've got all those versions on our website available for download. You can take them, use them, print them, whatever you need for them. All right, emergency kit. Let's talk preparedness. What are some things that you want to put in your emergency kit? First aid kit. All right, I got a first aid kit. Sorry, I don't hear it good. I heard flashlight over here. Here's your flashlight. I'm gonna throw it at you. Can you catch it? All right. What else? Radio. All right, I got a crank radio in the back. I heard drugs. Did you say drugs or medicine? No, okay. Just checking.
Okay.
All right,
There you go.
medications, what else? We just, all right, matches, maybe some candles, right? We got cash, right? Cash is king. Who said cash? Oh, exactly. Chargers. How many devices do most people have in their house? I wish I only had 3. Right. So how many, if you have kids, right, you've got, your phone. If they have phones, that's 4 phones with your spouse. I'm assuming everybody's got a tablet, a gaming system or something that they're carrying with them. So, all those chargers and extra chargers for all those devices. What else are we thinking about? All right. Yep. We got to make sure we have a full tank of gas. Yep. Crank radio. Medicine. Yeah. Nobody said beer. Nobody said beer. No booze.
Your port.
Yes. All right. Let's see. Let's see how we do.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So we got food.
Who said glasses? Okay.
Yes, I'm gonna get the glasses. We
Yeah.
have food for 5 days, right? FEMA recommendation is 72 hours. How many of you guys were, how many days have you guys were gone for Matthew? Who remembers? Yeah, it was about 10-ish days, give or take. It's a long time, right? But still, when you came back, not everything was up and running, right? So we recommend 5 days. Not only for when you leave, if you get where you're going and you get impacted by the hurricane as well, and you may be without power, you have those supplies, but then restock those supplies before you come back, because when you come back, the odds are all the grocery stores are not going to be open. The drug stores aren't going to be open. They're only going to be parts and pieces open at that point when you're able to get back. Pretty simple list there, but really it's what is, take out your, really, what does that look like minus the 5 days of food and water? Vacation, exactly right. When you're talking about evacuating, you're talking about an emergency kit. Just start like you're going on vacation, right? What do I need when I leave home for a week? Very similar. And then add in those important papers and those important documents. How do you guys store documents? Waterproof bag. I go by a rule of 3. I keep them in paper. I have them electronically in the cloud, and then a family member in another state has a copy on a thumb drive in their safe. So I keep 3 copies of everything everywhere. It's a little cumbersome, but I have it. The other thing we do with papers for us in our plan is anything that's important that's in the filing cabinet that we have that's in paper is in a folder that's red. And they're all in the same drawer. So when we go to evacuate, anything that's paper that my wife needs, she opens the drawer, everything that's red, she just picks it up, drops it into the box that we have to take it with us, and she just puts it in the car and goes. So little things like that. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Not it.
Yes, we used to do that. And that was actually,
Repeat your question. Sorry.
oh, I apologize. The question was, is that the town used to take in plans and stamp them for rebuilding, is what we used to do. That was for the horizontal footprint in the elevations. It was not to negate you from building back to building code or hiring a licensed contractor. So it was more of a planning thing than I'm in the building division. So but when you go, let's say your house is completely destroyed, that piece of paper and that stamp plan said, you can build back in this footprint and to this elevation. Now we've kind of started to go away from that. And that was a decision with the land management ordinance changes. And we are just, we have to build back to building code. And then the planning department looks at the aerial footprint. It would be, we do have it in our permit files, and there was like a separate CD group that we had. It is in our archives. But like I said, with the land management ordinance changes, there's been a lot of changes to the way that they're looking at, building setbacks and, the wetland setbacks that we had talked about. So there's been a lot of changes to that, and we're kind of trying to get away with that because we want people to build back to code. We don't want to build back to the way it was before because we've determined that some of that is not really safe. So yeah, it was a planning thing that we're phasing out. Yes, sir.
Standard though is both POA, both download your schematics and everything to a thumb drive. And that can be used if you have to file an insurance claim because it does show how everything put together.
Did everybody hear that?
Mm.
Okay. Do you mind if I hand you the microphone? Would you mind repeating that?
Computer knows it's actually-
Would you mind repeating that?
And the POA, it has a thumb drive of everything of each one of your homes. And we have that on file. And it is great to have that because if you go to your insurance company, you can show them how your home was built. Now, the town may say you may not be able to build it back. And I think the 50% rule is still in effect, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If your home is damaged more than 50%, you have to bring it up to current codes. If it's less than 50% of the value of the home, you do not have to bring it up to present code. And many of the homes that were built before the town was even incorporated, and a lot of them were here, the base flood elevation for the home has changed. I mean, it's higher now. Many of the homes were built at 14 feet. I think it is 16 and a half now.
At 13.
It's a 13
It's
now?
at 13, but there was that datum change. So it's the same elevation, but just
it's
measured
based
from a
on
different reference.
geography.
Yep,
Okay.
different reference point.
So
Mhm.
you're building to a higher elevation, and a couple of inches in a hurricane means a lot. Because once the water comes into your first floor and starts getting wicked up, it's all the drywall damage, it's all the sheetrock damage, it's all the electrical damage that takes place from just that water wicking up. So a couple of inches makes a big difference.
I know before, when you unpack the code, they changed their house, so they have to be shorter now. When they have these plates, they're physical on, and they have to change their.
Yes, and another thing that has changed as well is the window protection for our wind zone. We're in a 140-mile-an-hour wind zone, and the building code now requires either impact rated glass or shutters. And when we go to inspect the shutters, we have to actually see the shutters. We actually have to see the hardware on the building and then the hardware that's used to attach them. So a lot of times, like old sliders and things like that don't meet that 140-mile-an-hour wind zone, when they're replaced, they do have to be replaced with a code compliant window or door. Very good point. Thank you.
All right, back to preparedness. Just a really quick slide on specialty needs, things you may need. Again, it's all about you. It's where you are at the time in your life and what products you need. We recommend, like folks on oxygen, if you have a vendor here, is there a partner vendor or somewhere you can refill your oxygen or maintain your concentrator when you evacuate? Think about those things. I see extra glasses on there. How many people have readers? How many pair do you have? Just one? 50, right? Yes. Well, once my wife got to the point of using readers, I realized how important they were because every time I turned around, there was one somewhere. And then I got to the point and realized, that's a pretty good idea. So I have gone one step further. I have a pair of readers on the back of my phone. So I got my grandpa glasses on the back of my phone. So, so again, it's where you are and how you plan and prepare for where you are at the time. Instruction manuals and vendor contacts, that's really important for any specialty equipment you have. Don't just take the equipment, take the vendor information and contact information, because if it breaks, you'll need to get a hold of that vendor. Oop. That was way out of place. All right, before you leave, some things to think about. Secure your outdoor items, right? Anything that's outside can become a missile, right? It can become a flying object and damage your house and or somebody else's. If you have a swimming pool, consider lowering that pool, dropping it down. You pull furniture, bring it inside, put it in your garage. If it's plastic, throw it in the pool. Exactly right. Don't forget your hurricanes. Elevate items like inside of your home. So if you have a 2-story home or even a single-story home, if they're important items that you're not taking with you, put them in a Rubbermaid container, seal them up, but put them on a shelf, put them on the top of the counter. get them out of the way, give them a chance to survive, even if you get some water in your house. Don't forget your hurricane shutters and screens if you have them. Put those up before you leave. Think about your utilities. A lot of that is personal preference when it comes to utilities. I leave my utilities on. I just turn things off at the source. So, I turn the water off of the washing machine. I turn the breaker off for the dryer. I turn the breaker off for other things. So just the things that you want to turn off, I don't kill the breaker to the entire house. I leave my air conditioning running because if power doesn't go out, I don't want to come back to a hot, sticky home. Some things to think about in your refrigerator or in your freezer, just fill up a cup of water and drop a coin on top of it, right? If it doesn't thaw, that coin's still sitting on top when you get there, your refrigerator stayed running the entire time or didn't lose temperature. If the penny or coin is sitting at the bottom, right, what do you want to do with that food? Throw it out. So think of, those are some things. Yes, ma'am. Yes, propane tanks outside, turn them off and secure them. Make sure they're off and secure, strap them to a tree, make sure they're snugged up against your house, because one of the big things after Hurricane Matthew, we had propane tanks everywhere. Yes, they're everywhere. Yeah. And secure your home, right? Lock everything up. Don't leave it open, right? Because if there's a total evacuation, what are we decreasing significantly here? Security, exactly right. All right, so let's talk about, one of the things I like to do is talk about emergency management as a whole and how the town functions and operates. It's not only, for me, it's not only important for you to know how to prepare yourself, but it's to understand what we do, how we do, and why we do it. So in the state of South Carolina, that's kind of the hierarchy of, kind of the hierarchy of emergency management in the state. So the state is obviously in charge. They're the big dog. They're the boss. Beaufort County, we're subject to Beaufort County in that great scheme of emergency management. It doesn't mean a whole lot except when it comes to getting stuff. So we need stuff that we don't have. For example, during Hurricane Matthew, we went out and we asked for 4 urban search and rescue teams. Those are teams designed to walk and search for people. We don't have 4 of those, right? We have 1. And those guys were riding fire trucks and ambulances and engines, so they couldn't be used for that purpose. So we asked for 4 urban search and rescue teams. We don't have them. We asked Beaufort County. Well, we're Beaufort County's team. We're the urban search and rescue team for the county, so they don't have one. So then they go to the state and say, hey, we need 4 urban search and rescue teams. And there are small urban search and rescue teams throughout the state. They got those resources for us and sent them to us. So that's really the biggest piece in the hierarchy of emergency management in South Carolina is stuff. That's the town's organizational chart. I don't expect you to read that. I just throw it up there for context because we have a very large organizational chart. We run our emergency operations center just like they would a wildfire out west using the incident command system. You can look all the way up at the top. That's me. I'm the incident commander. So anything that happens in the town related to that, it's my responsibility. And you can see the dotted line across the top. That's our policy group. That's the mayor, the town manager, and a couple other key staff members that help drive the organization, help drive the system. But I'm running everything below that. Just to keep it simple, but across the top, we have ops, planning, finance, public safety and intelligence, and logistics. That any organizational chart for any structure fire, any wildfire, any large scale incident in the country, it'll run the same. We set it up like that for a couple of reasons. One, it's easy. It's an easy flow and people are familiar with it and we can easily train to it. 2 is if we need help. So when we get to the point we can't run our EOC anymore, we're 10, 12, 15, we're a small town and our staff numbers are real. We don't have a lot of staff that can do these extra duties. So when we get tired, when we get worn out, we can call in a incident management team. And they understand ops, planning, finance, logistics, and public safety and intelligence. We can bring a team in, they can train with us for a day, and then they can take over our operations and start running it for us and give us a break so we can get some relief. Now, under that is when it gets a little different. Under that, it's designed more like the town. So we have a shop unit. The town has a shop. We have a stormwater unit. We have stormwater. So once we go below that, we try to get it to look as much like the town as we can. So as we grab town staff, I'm grabbing somebody for the stormwater unit, they're coming out of the stormwater section. So they're due stormwater. So we try to blend that and make that more functional with that. And you can see that's a lot of people, and that doesn't include our entire EOC. That's just position. So for example, that planning section could have 7 people in it. The operations section could have 7 people in it. So we could have 30, 35-ish people when our EOC is fully open. So this is kind of our EOC opening process in its simplest form. Something happens. We note it. Something happens, we got to do something. Then we start having initial EOC meetings. That's our critical staff. That's at ops, planning, finance, logistics. That's that top rung of folks. We start meeting and talking and begin to have virtual meetings, really, just to get ourselves started. Here's what we know, here's where we're going, here's what's happening. After that initial meeting, we begin to lay out our plan for future meetings. Okay, how much time do we have? Okay, we can have another virtual meeting. We can continue to meet. And as we continue those virtual meetings, more people get involved in that conversation. More people are added to the conversation. And then our EOC opens. That's when all the staff is in the building, or a portion of the staff is in the building, and we begin to run our emergency operations center. Everything is run out of that building. And then we start our planning P, which I'm going to talk about here in a second because it's important. Our EOC is run by the Team of Teams concept. Has anybody read the book Team of Teams? Yeah, that's generally the concept we use for our meeting. Yes, we have a organizational chart that looks like the far left, but we more run like the far right. We are completely intertwined. Everybody's involved in everything, and you can make decisions at any level that needs to be made. So that's just kind of our general concept for EOC operations. I talked a little bit about the planning P. So our planning section, which is one of those top rungs, is, in my opinion, the most important piece of our emergency operations center. And this is how we run every single day, is the simple concept of a planning P. The bottom 3 little boxes there, what I showed you a second ago was something happens, that's our flow, essentially in that bottom. Then we get to operations. So day 1, we're putting a plan together and we're executing our plan. We have an overarching emergency operations plan, but that incident plan is very specific to the incident we're dealing with at the moment. So we come in and we have our objectives meeting first thing in the morning. So we're running our plan. About 10 o'clock in the morning, we have an objectives meeting. What do you think we're doing there? Exactly. We're establishing the objectives. We're identifying our critical needs for tomorrow. So we're doing this. We're executing our plan today, but we're building our plan for tomorrow. So our objectives meeting, I'm talking to the town manager, I'm talking to the mayor, I'm getting a situational assessment, and then I'm setting our objectives for the day. And then in our objectives meeting, when I set those objectives, we talk them through, make sure everybody agrees to them. And then we go out and continue to execute our plan. The people in the objectives meeting are going, I'm executing the plan today, but now I'm also working on how am I going to accomplish those objectives tomorrow? What do I need to do that? So then we come back together, and for example, the operations section will go, hey, one of our objectives is to deploy 50 personnel to Sea Pines to cut trees. Okay, so then, cool. The logistics, he's going, okay, the logistics, I need to make sure that I have 25 chainsaws and chaps and what have you. And logistics goes, yep, we can take care of that. We can cover that. And we do that for every single objective. We're also talking with the public information officer at that point is, yes, we can message that. Or what do I need to add to our messaging? Then after we set that, we have tactics meetings, which are smaller meetings, and each individual section is clearly identifying the specific tactics that they're going to take to accomplish that objective. And then at the end of the day, we have a planning meeting. And if you go to any wildfire, the planning meeting at the end of the day is essentially the IC, the ops chief, the plans chief, logistics chief, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. So you're talking 5 people. We do it much different. Our planning meeting has every single person in the building, plus people virtually are involved in that planning meeting. So everybody understands what the plan is, and everybody can have input to the plan if there's something that we missed. And then the next morning we come in, I brief the plan for the day. Has anything changed? Our objective's still good? And then we start the whole thing all over again. For Hurricane Matthew, we did that, I believe it was 16 times, we doing that cycle every single day. And at the end, it comes an incident action plan, an actual plan that we have for the day. And we send that out so Peter would get a copy of that plan. So he knows what our objectives are. He knows what's going on for the day. All right, evacuation. Actually, let me throw one more piece out there because Sherry's here and she'll get mad if I don't. Along with that planning piece, we're developing a situation report, and Sherry's the situation unit leader, so she makes the report. So every day we have a large report that comes out that says, here's what we're doing, here's what we've accomplished, here's the information that we know. And it's a 2 or 3 page report that lays out everything that happened throughout the course of the day. So we have that not only for internal use, for internal situational awareness, but it also helps our partners and it helps us with our FEMA reimbursement. So let's talk evacuation. Anything you want to add, situation unit leader?
No.
Okay.
They keep the EOC cold. That's it.
I'd have gotten in big trouble if I'd have forgotten that. All right, so evacuation. So who in South Carolina orders an evacuation? The governor, right? Can anybody else do it? Exactly right. So the governor is the only one that makes that evacuation order. So what I want to talk about is 2 things. The public evacuation, again, it's completely up to the governor. There is a feedback loop associated with his decision. So the county is on a state call roughly every single day with the state. And as that evacuation decision gets closer and closer, in the county situation room, every municipality, the school district, and several others are represented in the room. So we're providing feedback to our representatives saying, yes, we concur, this is a good idea, or no, we really don't think it's a good idea, we prefer not to do it. So we're providing that information up, and then they're providing that information to the governor through the state EMD call. So that information is going up, but it's up to him. He can take our information and go, yeah, I concur, or he can say, nope, we're evacuating. Both have happened. So when he makes that call, there's 2 different evacuation orders. Anybody know what they are? So there is no voluntary evacuation anymore. It used to be. They got rid of it. Governor Nikki Haley got rid of voluntary evacuation. So there is the mandatory evacuation. Anybody have any idea what the other is? Medical, right? Mandatory medical. So for those of you looking for voluntary evacuation, which one do you think you're going to listen to? Mandatory medical, right? Because the mandatory medical has to come first, right? Because all of the nursing homes and the hospitals have to begin moving people and planning to move those folks out. So my recommendation, if you're looking for an early sign to go, that mandatory medical is where it is, because that's normally 24 to 48 hours before a mandatory public evacuation. So there. I didn't do it. Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Yep. Mhm. 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 Yeah, that's all on him. I know several of the hotels do change their rules for pets when the hurricane. So I would look at what hotel you're going to and have a conversation beforehand. All right, just really quick, base camp. Peter mentioned the fact that there will be no public safety services on the island if there's an evacuation. So we fully evacuate the island. We go to USCB Bluffton campus. I'll get that out in a second. That's where we go for evacuations. We've done that 3 times. Hurricane Matthew, we had on the southern Beaufort County, we had almost 700 people on that side of on that campus housing for Hurricane Matthew. So that's where we go. So to Peter's point, there will be no services here. So if you call 911, they're going to say, okay, thanks, get your name, get your address, and we'll check when we get back, because we can't go. If we do stay, we'll get to a point where we won't respond as well. Once the winds get sustained 50, we're done. We park everything and we can't come out because of the danger of rolling the apparatus and the danger to our crew. So, when we go to base camp. That's our primary. Our secondary fallback point for a Category 4 or 5 storm is Barnwell County. So we'll go as far as Barnwell County of an evacuation for a category 4 or a category 5. There you go. Mhm. Mhm. Yes, ma'am. We as the town go, that's our base camp. Yes. So, all public safety.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so again, that's the gym at USCB in the Bluffton campus that had all of Bluffton Township Fire and all of Hilton Head Fire in that campus together. Again, we had roughly 700 people. Reentry, I'll be really quick on reentry, but it's kind of important. There's a 4-tiered system for reentry. Tier 1 is our critical staff that are doing debris removal and public safety. Tier 2 is essentially the supporting staff for them. Your security staff is included in that tier 1. Tier 3 is beginning to get some other things back up and running. It's additional, your GM and some of those other staff can come back in for hotels and the gated communities and all that. And then tier 4 is where you guys come back in. All right. Tier 4 doesn't require any cards, nothing else. It just requires a driver's license that shows that you live on Hilton Head Island, or your paid property tax bill that show you live on the island with an ID to match it. So that's simpler process than it was for Matthew. If you were here for Matthew, that was a disaster from a reentry standpoint, not from the plan not being executed, but the communication of the evacuation order being lifted.
Here.
Great.
Once you left,
Great point. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to hear the governor say, I have rescinded my evacuation order and returned it to local authority. That's the key point there. That's the piece that was missing after Hurricane Matthew. It wasn't communicated well. The governor said it, but it just wasn't communicated well in the media and some of the other ways. So listen to that. But the governor's essentially saying, I don't want it anymore. You have it. So now our mayor has it. And then from that point, it'll be a county-wide discussion and reentry will happen. And then it'll be pushed on through press releases, the town's Facebook page, all of our social media blast, all that stuff. We'll blast it as hard and as fast as we can. And we got some of our social, there it is. That's the reentry. I had my slide just a tick out of order. Recovery really quick. These are the numbers just from Hurricane Matthew, and Peter was right. It was essentially the assumption is it was a mid-grade category 1 storm. Those assumptions are based on debris and some just general appearance of the island, because the weather station for the National Weather Service stopped working at midnight. So there's no solid data other than official data outside of that, which stopped at midnight. So we assume it's about a mid-category 1 storm. And on the island, that's 120,000 trees down. We had 200 million yards of debris, and it cost $44 million to remove debris just from Matthew. So top inflation on top of that, that number is going to be a whole lot more. That's where you can find all of our information. Facebook's probably the biggest. One of the things that we do during a hurricane is we'll flip our town's website to be a disaster website or an incident website. So only incident related stuff is on the front, and then the Facebook feed will be on the side of the page or on that page as well. So you don't have to have Facebook to be able to see our Facebook feed. The county does a good job. If you're not connected with Nixle, you look that up. It's a great tool from that to talk. They do all kinds of traffic stuff. They do all kinds of, anything that the law enforcement has a heavy presence in, they drop it on there. So it's a great tool. Just Google Nixle and it'll come up. Nixle Beaufort County, South Carolina, because North Carolina will pop up. Just a couple of the accolades the town has. We're storm ready. We're tsunami ready. Hurricane strong through the National Safe Coalition, Homes Coalition. And then I'll stop there because we went a bit over. Any questions you have? If not, I will be right here until everybody's left. Yep. Yes, sir.
This has to do with tornadoes more than hurricanes.
Say again?
And it has to do with tornadoes and hurricanes. In your book,
Mm.
one of the pages
Mm.
talks about don't ever go under an overpass.
Right.
My wife and I were on our way to Missouri, couple years ago,
Mhm.
tornado was coming. All the trucks on the highway
Mm.
jumped under the overpass.
Mhm.
Including us, we were kind of just sucked right into it. Why don't you wanna go under an overpass during a tornado?
Yep, that's just the guidance from the National Weather Service. They recommend not going on an underpass. I'm assuming it's because just the way the winds blow and the way winds could pull you out, but that's just their recommendation. So to be honest with you, I don't know the science behind their recommendation. Yeah, and it could collapse on you. Yeah, it could collapse on you. So that may be it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Mhm.
What's the community's preference for having people come back? We have-
That's
You-
why, that's
you-
why I was
you-
grabbing the.
Do you,
the microphone.
I'm gonna go this way.
May not do that, let's say it.
Were you here, Peter, from that? Okay. A couple of things. The evacuation, when they do the medical evacuation, we will send out an email blast. That's your cue that if you want to go, well, if you want to go where you want to go, you go then. Because once the mandatory evacuation is called, whatever lane you're on the bridge, and they will reverse one of the lanes on the bridge, that's where you're going. If that lane goes to Georgia, you're going to Georgia. If your lane goes to 95, you're going to 95. That's it. You cannot change lane. So if you leave before the mandatory is called, you can go wherever you want to go. But once that mandatory is called, whatever lane you're in, you're stuck in that lane. Fuel your car up during hurricane season. Always have a full tank because you never know. And it's going to be difficult. Coming back, the governor is going to say, okay, I've turned it over to the local authorities. The local authority then calls up the general managers and says, what do you think? And I had a fight with the mayor at that time because he wanted to let everybody back like on a Wednesday. And I said, no way. We did not use FEMA's crews to clear our streets. And it was for a simple reason that they're too damn slow. They have to come in and they have to certify all these rules and regulations that they have to go by before they will approve you to have it removed. And then the debris is removed on their priority and on their schedule. We have a contract with Cleveland Construction. They put their equipment in our ball field. And when we came back, Cleveland was already down Seabrook Drive halfway, clearing one lane. And I mean this in all sincerity. I don't want you back until I have all the roads cleared because it's dangerous for you. They're out there cutting down trees, clearing debris. And what do the people do when they come back? They stand underneath the damn tree while they're cutting it. You know, they put themselves in danger. There was no power, there was no water for several days after the mandatory was called off. So you had nothing. And some of the homes you literally couldn't get to because of all the debris that was down. Some people called us, and if we could get to their home, we crawled through the rubble and tried to find their home and say, hey, is your home all right? And most of the time, their home was fine. You talked about tornadoes. There were several trees and paths that were down that I didn't see them. Tom didn't see them, but I could swear they spawned tornadoes because the trees were just twisted right off. It was not blown down, they were twisted off. So that probably did occur. But coming back, we will tell you, we don't want you back yet. Wait until we have all the streets cleared, because the last thing we want is a bunch of cars backed up because they can't get to their home, and we're still trying to clear the street and move the debris to the side. And all we're gonna do is remove that debris to the shoulder of the road, and then look for fire hydrants. And there are power lines down, there are sewer mains that were broken, there is, raw sewage running all over the place. It was an absolute mess. You do not want to be here for that.
So if Matthew was day 0, what day, if you could have played it all out all over again, what day would
Matthew
you
hit
want?
on the, is it
October 8th.
Yeah, on October 8th, and I think the following Saturday is when we reopen.
How many days was that?
It's probably 6 days, 6 or 7 days.
How will we know that it's okay to
Well,
come back?
If you are on the enumerate, and this is how I get all my people to sign up, Tippy. If you are on the enumerate software, I will send out an email blast through Pippi to tell you that it's okay to come back. And we will post you. Prior to Matthew, we had 1,500 subscribers to our email list. After Matthew, we have 5,000. Because we gave out tons of information. And at the last coffee, I talked about the bridge project, and next door is a wonderful place. And someone had a lot of sad comments to say about my analysis of that. I care about one thing with that bridge project. I care about you. I care about, number one, getting you off the island in evacuation. How much has grown since Matthew? How many more people live here since Matthew? And how many more tourists are here during Matthew? Getting people off the island during tourist season is going to be a nightmare on a 2-lane bridge, even if you reverse the lane. The other thing why I care about that bridge project is that I personally employ 100 people for Hilton Head Plantation. The golf courses, the restaurants, the Cypress, you're talking about 1,000 people that come over that bridge every day. And you guys are paying a premium for every employee, every contractor that comes over that bridge. So making it easier to get here is very, very important. So don't care about anything else, but you getting a good deal and you're getting off the island safely and back on the island safely. And ma'am, you had a.
Yes. Matthew, I think there was a program whereby, I'm pretty loud, I don't know if I need that. Whereby if a tree came down your house and breached your roof, there was a tarping service. And then that stopped, I get it. Matthew probably changed a lot of things with respect to that. But what advice do you have to homeowners that can't get back, can't see their property, might have rain pouring through? Like, what do you do? How do you know? And who could come and at least tarp your roof?
There are companies that you can contract with now that will, number one, if you don't have hurricane shutters, they will put plywood up on your home for a price. And they will also have that service of tarping the roof. They're out there. They do that. There are also companies, and if you look them up on the internet, that have drones. And if you're away and you want to see what your house looks like, if they can see it, if it's not covered with vegetation, they'll put a drone over your house for a fee and you can see what it looks like. But those services are out there.
But then, again, I don't think there's any magic answer to this, but, people, I know I had one of my guys trying to come in to look at my property and couldn't get in because of the tiered,
Well, they have to follow,
So, yeah.
that I can't help you with. That's a Tom Dunn thing.
So you're just left to, they're okay with that, or does, and I know you guys are really busy, at some point, do you look around and contact people if they know your house is in trouble?
If people contacted us and we were able to look at their home and go back and give them feedback, we did that. Security officers did that. I did that. And, Tom talked about, general managers back on the island. Vanessa, I've gone through the courses and I am a certified armed security officer, believe it or not. So I come in with security, with my gun, in my uniform, as with the first wave. So I'm here because I want to look out for you and I don't want to wait until some other time to come over. And you keep that to yourself, Tom.
Yeah, no, I know it is. Here, let me clarify a couple of things before we get too far. When during Hurricane Matthew, the FEMA rules are much, much different than they are now. They did zero private property collection at all. We could not in any way, shape, or form come inside of the gate to pick up anything. We could come in and cut and toss, but we couldn't pick anything up. The town went to battle with FEMA, and we were the first locality on the coast to get FEMA to agree to do large-scale private property debris removal, and that's why it took so long for us to get inside the gates. There's still an approval process, so we can't just come in and start picking up. We still have to get FEMA approval to say yes, but that process has gotten much easier, so it'll be faster. And when Peter mentioned FEMA contractors, there were actually our contractors. It's Crowder Golf is a town contractor.
That's approved by FEMA.
No, they're approved by us. They don't have, so the reimbursement costs are approved by FEMA, but the contractor is not. So, but yes, so we have a contractor that picks it up, a monitor that monitors it, and then it goes to FEMA for reimbursement. And on the flip side, after Matthew, a couple of things that just changed with evacuation. Their intent is to not put traffic control points in place during the mandatory evacuation unless they're needed. So if the traffic is flowing normally, they're not going to force you into a lane. So but still, that's the key to go early is you don't want to get to the point where they drop those traffic control points in place. So before the traffic control points are in place, that's when you go, which is as soon as the mandatory drops or as soon as the voluntary or the mandatory medical drops. But as traffic builds and it gets heavier, that's when those traffic control points will go into play. Yep. Mhm. If the traffic control points are in place all the way to 17, past 95. Is it 17? Yeah. Whatever yeah. So they're once you're through that, so if you're in the far right-hand lane, you're going to 170 and 462 to 95. If you go up, then they force you over, then you're going on to 95, and then you're going to 17, the far left-hand lane. So it's right, middle, left. That's where you're going. Right lane is 170 to 462. Middle lane is 95. Left lane is 17. Everything goes north, nothing goes south.
Just so you all know, all of that information is in the hurricane preparedness guide that you can download. It talks about which lane goes where. It's all in there that was sent out to y'all. Okay.
And just one more thing, and to the town's credit, the program that the town has with the island POAs is a model for the country. I go out and I teach seminars on how we did this with the town of Hilton Head. And my colleagues across the United States are in awe of the relationship we have with local government. This is very, very unique, and they are to be applauded for what they have accomplished and what they have done and how they have protected you. It is unbelievable because it is not the case across the rest of the country. You hear about the wildfires, you hear about the mudslides. They don't have any of the cooperation that we have with the town of Hilton Head. It is a model program.
I have a question. After Hurricane Matthew, coming back onto the island, when they said, okay, you can all come back, how long did that process take? You know, was it backed up all the way to 95? Was it, what was that all?
It was
In other words, should we wait an extra day or two?
It was a train wreck. Yes. And a lot of it was because of the messaging and people started to stack. I really believe that if for reentry this time, it's going to be a much better process because we have changed the way the traffic control points are run on the return. For example, during Matthew on the reentry piece of it, you may have had all National Guard guys at the traffic control point. They don't know Beaufort County. They don't know that could be your house right there and you're sitting at a traffic control point. So now there will be a Beaufort County deputy at every single traffic control point, no matter what. So I think we learned a lot during Matthew. So I think the process will be much smoother and much faster. But again, if you don't have to come back, don't. Give it an extra day, give it an extra 2 days. Yes, ma'am.
Russ, closing of the bridge, you had mentioned that your husband got stuck because the
Bridge doesn't close.
What?
Bridge does not close. We do not close the bridge. For Hurricane Matthew, the bridge stayed open. It was never closed until it was time for re-entry. Outbound was never closed at all. The only time the bridge will close we will close it locally is, well, let me rephrase that. The town cannot close the bridge at all because it's not inside the town limits. So Beaufort County Sheriff's Office on occasion has closed the bridge due to ice and snow and a couple of storms we had because of crashes. They're not going to put a deputy out there. They're not going to put a vehicle out there in the road. So the bridge will stay open. As South Carolina DOT would have to send resources down to close that bridge. No. And since I've been here, the bridge has not been closed except for re-entry after a hurricane.
May I tell everybody something really quick? Hi, if you guys, Tom had talked about the Nixle If you guys want to sign up for it, one of the ladies just asked me, and it's super simple. If you text 888-777 and text your zip code to that number, 888-777, put your zip code in the subject line, you're automatically opted in for Nixle. You can go into nixle.com and add your email address if you would like. So I get my Nixle notifications both on email and text message, because sometimes the email is a little bit more detailed than the text. When you click on the text, it takes you out to the website. So real simple if you guys are interested in that service. And if you need my help, I'll help you. 888-777. You're welcome. That's for Nixle.
Nixle.
It's for Nixle, to sign up for the sheriff's office alerts. Yes. Put a, if you put the number, like you're gonna send it to somebody's phone number, that will be 888-777, and then the message will be your zip code. Because that will center it around where you are, so that way it knows that you're coming from Beaufort County, and it won't send you stuff from Chicago. So.
Oh, no, no, sorry, I was thinking area code.
Yeah, no, it's your zip code, 29, if you live here, 29926.
All right. I know we went over, but so thank y'all very much for sticking around. Well, actually, we'll be here until everybody has, if you have a question, we won't leave until you leave. Thanks, y'all.
So FEMA's gonna be a lot faster now with the
With the pushes are irrelevant. We can push all day long. It's the pickup is what gets us. Oh, yes, sir. Right on the table. Grab as many as you like.
You said,
Yeah.
they would not come in because they had